Hi there, welcome to this mini masterclass on how to introduce a new topic in a CLIL way. Now this topic of today, of this masterclass, was actually voted for by the majority of the people in the CLIL community Facebook group. And if you're not a member yet, make sure you join this free community. At the end of this mini masterclass, I will ask you to share both your opinion or any questions you might have, or maybe follow up things you want to know. Make sure you either let me know in the chat on Facebook or maybe another place that I post this video, so that I can look what you think and I can use that to come up with new ideas and help you out with CLIL in any other way you like. So enough about this, let's start with the presentation. So how to introduce a new topic in a CLIL way. As I said, chosen by the majority in the Facebook group. In this mini masterclass, you will discover why introducing a topic is actually very CLIL. You will understand about language involvement when introducing something new, and you will learn how to apply 3 ways to introduce a new topic. Now, what is a mini masterclass? Let's talk about that first, because the people in my Facebook group know about my Facebook Lives, which is just me really talking with you and sharing ideas. But this is slightly different, because this is going to be me really teaching something. You might want to have paper and pen ready, but obviously you can always watch the replay as well. I want to talk for about 20 minutes. And where I normally have a lot of interactivity going on right now, this is a pre-recorded video, so there's less interactivity going on. But that's because something went wrong with the sound earlier. Now, during a mini masterclass like this, I always want aimed at combining both practical ideas and some information on CLIL. I could just give you 20 activities to use in your lesson, but I want you to know a bit more about CLIL to make sure you really understand why certain things work and develop your own activities according to those ideas. So I will give you ideas to use in your lesson to inspire you, to make sure you take away something from this masterclass and you can use that in your lesson tomorrow. But I also want you to learn a bit more about CLIL. So I always try to combine those two. As I said, if you have any questions or remarks about this mini masterclass, feel free to either type them into the chat on Facebook or in the comment section below. So let me start with the question: is introducing a new topic in a CLIL only activity? According to me, the answer is no. And why is that? Well, if you introduce something new, this can be in a CLIL setting, in a bilingual setting. But it can also be in a regular teaching setting, obviously. Now, in my opinion, CLIL can be used in both bilingual but also first language situations in a lesson. But that's another discussion which I will not talk about right now. It has to do with how you define CLIL and how you use it. But everyone introduces something new in a lesson, something like a new concept, maybe a new phrase, a new topic, or even a new chapter. Everyone does this, and the list goes on. So you really know that this is something that's not CLIL only. However, CLIL is important because there's still a CLIL way to do this. And what do I mean with that? Well, it's not just content. You're teaching content through a language. That means language is always involved. But how exactly that works, I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a minute. So let's talk about what is introducing a new topic. What are some important elements related to that? Well, one of the things is it's often in the first half of the lesson, because it's when you set up the goals, it's when you activate prior knowledge, and when you introduce something new, because the second half of the lesson can then be used to either apply this new knowledge and implement it, or guide the understanding of students and help them make sure they really understand, and obviously reflect upon their learning and see if they really understand it. So this whole introducing a new concept part is quite often at the beginning of the lesson. Something else that's quite often involved with introducing a new concept is activating prior knowledge. A lot of research has been done that when you learn something new and you can relate it to something that you already know, you learn a lot easier and you understand things a lot better. My 3-year-old son actually does the same thing. Whenever he sees something new, he tries to link it to something he already knows, which is quite often wrong. But it's a great way to see that we as humans actually learn that way. And the associations he makes right now are quite funny, but we actually do the same thing all the time as well. Now, I'm not really a research type of guy, so don't ask me what research has been done and when this actually has been discussed before, but I did read some books about this, and I know for a fact that this is true. And I'm sure you can find research related to this if you're really into that. Now, as I said, language is always involved, and whenever you teach something new, that means it's tricky, it means it's difficult, it means it's something that students might find hard. That means you should make sure the language level is not too high, because as soon as you have a high level concept and high level language, it will be too difficult for students. So make sure that when the high context is really high level, the language is rather low level. And a way to do that is by scaffolding it, by scaffolding the language input. And I'm going to show you a way to do that in a minute. So this is really how you should work with introducing a new topic. If it's new and then it's probably difficult, and it means you should be aware of the language, make it salient, and make it not too hard. Well, that's it for the theoretical things. Let's get practical and think about some ways to implement this in your lesson. I'm going to show you, as I said, 3 activities you can use in your lesson to introduce a new topic in a CLIL way. The first one here is guess the topic. Now I show you, here you can find a couple of words: IB, listening, Cambridge, English, students, teachers and lessons. IB actually stands for International Baccalaureate, which is an examination students have to finish when at the end of their bilingual program in the Netherlands. All of these words relate to one other topic. And the funny thing is, if you do this in class, they might come up with another topic. In my experience, that happens a couple of times. And that's okay, because it means they associate it with other things. It might also mean you need a few more words to really clarify what you're talking about. Now, this type of activity is called a Wordle or a word cloud, and can be used at the beginning of your lesson to see, okay, what topic is related to this. And it's really easy to make online. It's easy to make, for example, at worditout.com, but there's many other websites you can use to create this. It only takes a few minutes, and you can actually, even if you already have a text, you don't even have to come up with the words yourself. If you have a text about the topic you want to discuss, you can just copy paste it in there, and then it selects words from the text, and you can even do some criteria there to make sure that it selects the words you want, and then it creates a word cloud out of this. I even saw that you can do this with Microsoft Word, but I haven't done that myself, so I don't know how that works. But anyway, that's a great way to start your lesson. Just hand out a few of these Wordles or a few of these word clouds, or show it on a screen and ask students to say, okay, what is the topic of today? Now, possible follow-ups for this activity are student-generated ones, so you ask students to create a word cloud themselves. I don't know about you, but I've got a few of those really creative girls in my classroom who just want to color everything. So they might go full artistic mode on this and create really beautiful word clouds that you can use in other lessons as well, but that you can also use in lesson for them to compare and see if they can actually figure out what the word is about. Then and you can even scaffold this again by giving them a list of words to choose from, or you can do this completely, ask them to choose something completely on their own. You can also turn this activity around, so instead of giving them lots of words and finding the topic, the other way around is, of course, brainstorming. So you start the lesson with saying, okay, this is the topic, what do we already know about this? But that's probably something you have done before or something you already know about. So that's why I wanted to do the opposite activity right now. Something else you can do with this activity is, after they have guessed the topic, they now know 6 or 7 words related to this topic, you will ask them to rank this in order of importance. So which one has the most influence on this topic, or has, according to the student's opinion, is most important to this specific topic. So it's something that you can ask students to explain. It's already going a bit further than just knowing the word. They have to understand what the relationship is and compare that with the other words in this word cloud. So that's really already going a bit further than just understanding and remembering. And the last activity that you can do is ask students to finish it, to create more words related to this word cloud or this Wordle. So when they're already 6 or 7 words, you ask them to add 3 more. And they might come up with really different things, but that's a great way to see what they associate this word with? And you can ask them to explain that, etc. So it's kind of an activity. Then you combine the brainstorm and this word cloud activity. Now, why is this a CLIL activity? Well, there's a couple of things you can answer this question. A couple of ways you can answer this question. It activates prior knowledge because you ask students to come up with things they already know. They see a word and they have to come up with, okay, what do I know about this word and how does it compare with the other word? Both language input, the wordle itself, and language output is motivated. So language output is motivated, and with that I mean if they have to discuss it with each other, if they have to explain to you what the word is, or if they have to create things themselves. In all of those cases, they have to explain things on their own, they have to work together, so language output is motivated. And last but not least, I scaffolded the input, and this is something that I mentioned before. If the concept level is high, so if it's really tricky, then you make sure that the language level is not that high. And in this case, I provided the words. I didn't say, okay, so here you go, have fun, do this. But I actually gave them a few words related to it to make them understand what the topic is about. Another activity that you can do with when you introduce something new is scrambled word. Here you can find 4 scrambled words. And I quite often could use this in class at the beginning of a chapter, but I will say a bit more about that in a minute. Now, despite this video not being live, I just do want to give you a few seconds to have a quick look at these words and see if you see the correct answers here. So I will type in, no, I will give you the answers now, otherwise this takes too long. So the first one is scaffolded learning, the second one content and language integrated learning, the third one cooperative learning, and the last one, language output. All of these things obviously having to do with CLIL. Now this is really easy to generate online, but do make sure that if you use devices in your lesson, and students have their own devices, there's a lot of scrambled word solvers out there as well. So make sure you don't give them the opportunity to solve it with the computer, because then they will figure it out really quickly. And students from any age like this. I actually do that with 15-year-olds, and they asked me, when do we do this again? So they actually really liked having to figure out these things and finding new words that way. So what makes this activity CLIL? Well, actually the 3 things I just mentioned are all implemented here as well. It activates prior knowledge, because they have to think about, okay, have I seen this word before? What does it have to do with the word that we're now discussing, etc.? Language input is scaffolded because they have a scrambled word. It's not just any word, it's already there. And language output is motivated once I ask them to explain it, either written or spoken. And if you want to make sure they all produce output, it might be easy to first ask them to write it down, and that way you're sure written output is also motivated. And obviously the input is scaffolded. Possible follow-ups for this activity are to make it more difficult. You might have noticed this one wasn't really hard because the first and the last letter were in the correct position. It's quite easy in all of those generators to make sure that doesn't happen, and then the words are way harder to figure out. I combined this activity with the scan the chapter activity. So I gave this list at the beginning of a chapter, and I asked students to find them when they scroll through the book and find the words, and actually then I have made sure that I've scaffolded their learning in a way, because I want them to learn those new words, and I'm sure that they already have seen those new phrases, those new words, whenever we encounter them when we go through the chapter itself, and it's something students really like to do. And the last possible follow-up, and I will mention this quite often, is again, this can be student generated. If you just ask them to find one of the more difficult words in the chapter and create scrambled words for each other, I really like making activities student generated because it's less work for me, which is always good, but also it really helps the students understand how certain things are made, how student activities are created, and they have to think in a different way, if you will. So that that's also a great way to, well, teach them something different than just the subject you teach. The last activity that I want to share with you, it's something that I can't really play with you right now. It's what am I? So students are in groups. One student receives a set of cards with words. new phrases, if you will. And if you really want to use new phrases, then make sure there's a description on there. And other students have to figure out what is on that card, and the person with the card can only answer with yes or no. And then the first group to find all the words wins. It's a great way because it's competitive, and all students really like competitive games. But more importantly, it's all about being able to explain something. I think this is better suited for younger students because it's more of a game-ish thing. I know that 15-year-old students might not really understand why they have to do this. You know, they want to understand the topic, the concepts, the new things to study, not so much the language games. And believe me, I'm not one of those people who always wants to do language games either. But this might be an activity you can just use as a lesson recap at the end, you know, not really as a way to fill your lesson. Like you, I have a book to finish, and it's sometimes a challenge. So I'm not looking for ways to spend more time on language. I'm trying to integrate these two. Believe me, whenever I ask on my tests students to explain certain phrases, and they can't do that, I'm not surprised they can't apply it as well. For example, if they don't know what's an isosceles triangle, I can't ask them to calculate anything with that or to draw one if they don't know what it is. So making sure that you spend some time on making sure they understand the concepts, that's really important for just concept learning as well. It's not just language learning. Anyways, moving on. It's more of a language focused activity. I already said that. There's a competitive element in there. And if you want to introduce something new, this is also something I already mentioned, include a description on the card. But you can also do this at the end of the lesson as a recap, and then you don't have to use the descriptions, then they really have to know it themselves. Again, what makes this a CLIL activity? Well, actually the same three things that I just mentioned work here as well. It activates prior knowledge. You have to think about, okay, what does this have to do with things we discussed before? The students who have to ask the questions have to do this as well. Everyone is engaged. That's a great way. That's also what makes this a CLIL activity. Language output is obviously motivated. They have to talk while doing this. And I scaffolded the input. I made sure there's words on those cards that I want them to understand, I want them to focus on. So in a way I already scaffolded both their learning and their language in this activity. Possible follow-ups for this activity are the taboo game, where students receive a card with 4 forbidden words and they have to describe what the word is. That's a whole that you can talk quite long about that as well because there's a lot of different ways to do this, but it's a fun activity to do as well. You might know the game 30 seconds, where you have a list of 5 words that you have to describe, and the other people have to guess the correct word, and you have to find all 5 of them within 30 seconds. That's another game that you can use. And you can also use this as a lesson starter. So when you did this at the previous lesson, then you start with, okay, remember we discussed these things in the last lesson, and these phrases. Now can you explain what they were about again? Do you remember? So it's a way to start a new lesson if you use this as a lesson recap at the end of the previous lesson. So the activities discussed in this masterclass are guess the topic, scrambled word, and what am I? What I did was I wanted to show you that introducing a new topic is both CLIL and non-CLIL, but because language is always involved, I think it's an activity that's very well suited for CLIL. And I taught you 3 activities you can use in your lesson to introduce a new topic in a CLIL way. Now please share in the chat or in the comments if you have any questions or follow-up requests. I look forward to helping you out with new mini masterclasses and hope to see you soon. Bye.